To begin with, I wanted to talk to you about what is supported independent living from your perspective.
Essentially 24/7 accommodation for people that require that level of support, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different other types of accommodation, but SIL is having someone on site 24/7. So there's always at least one support worker that's one person, or it can be two support workers to one person, or it can even be more than that as well.
I have a lot of brand new SIL providers, people who are mostly core supports providers. They're then looking to move into SIL because they think that the money is bigger, there's bigger plans there, there's more consistency around being able to roster staff. These seem to be the reasons people want to go into SIL. From your perspective, is that true? Are the plans bigger? Are you making more money with SIL? Is there or is there just for more risk, there's more reward?
Both.
Every SIL provider knows the challenges: compliance, rosters, claims. But what if you could work smarter, grow faster, and make a bigger impact? Welcome to SILosophy, where we have real conversations about what it takes to succeed in supported independent living. This podcast is powered by Tania Gomez Consulting and Resolve. Let's get into it.
Welcome to SILosophy. I'm joined with my first ever guest on this podcast, Josh Grapes from EQwell. Thanks so much, Josh, for joining me on the very first episode of SILosophy.
It's an honour, a privilege, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk as our first episode as a way to really introduce people to the concept of SIL, or supported independent living, and this broader concept of supported accommodation. To begin with, I wanted to talk to you about what is supported independent living from your perspective.
Well, as someone that's recently-ish in the last few years got into the industry myself, it's probably quite topical for me, but SIL is essentially 24/7 accommodation for people that require that level of support, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different other types of accommodation, but SIL is having someone on site 24/7.
Yeah, and SIL can look a few different ways. That we often hear about ratios and house mixes. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the makeup of a SIL home usually is?
Yeah, so there's always at least one support worker that's on site, and they service whoever or whichever people living with disabilities are there. But that ratio can go anywhere from one support worker to one person, or it can be two support workers to one person, or it can even be more than that as well. It's pretty rare. Most of what we do tends to be around that 2-to-1, 1-to-1, or 1-to-2. And 1-to-2 is where there's one support worker to two people, but it can go all the way up to 4 people, 5 people as well. Yeah.
So how is it determined what ratio there is? Who decides if it's a 1 participant to 1 support worker ratio, or a 3 participant to 1 support worker ratio, or a 3 worker to 1 participant ratio?
So they're not us, much smarter people, that are professionals in what they do. So usually an occupational therapist would come in, or there might be other allied health professionals as well that will deliver an assessment over a period of time, supporting the individual to look at what their needs might be in the home. This can sometimes be conflated with, the environment that they're in as well, because they might be living with mum and dad at the time. They might be getting that additional support. So I would say a good OT, an occupational therapist, or a good behaviour support practitioner that are delivering these sort of home and living reports that are guiding the decision of the NDIS to grant that funding, would take that into consideration as well. And then once they deliver their report to the NDIS, usually through a support coordinator, that then they make their final decision on what that funding level will be. So they take those recommendations very seriously. But usually there's a functional capacity assessment is what it's called, or an FCA. Lots of acronyms in the industry, as you well know. But it's... Yeah.
So it starts with a functional capacity assessment. Then what is the referral pathway for you to find participants? What comes first? Do you set up a house and find participants, or do you go and set up a home for a participant who needs a home?
That's interesting. You can do both. So our particular niche is usually challenging behaviours of concern and them not getting their needs met with their current provider. So that's typically why we work 1-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1 or even a 1-to-2 rarely. But in those instances, it can be better to set up a home specifically for an individual that's tailored to their needs, because obviously what we're aiming to do is to integrate that individual, that person, into their chosen community as much as possible. And obviously segregation is what we're trying to get away from with the NDIS. So that tailored support is a really unique opportunity to get better outcomes there. So in that sort of instance, EQwell personally would be more inclined to tailoring something for an individual when it's 1-to-1. But when you've got much bigger homes with 2 or more people, it's more likely that you would set up the home first, and then you would then send out an email to your network to suggest that you've got availability, and then people would get in contact with you. So it's interesting with the 1-to-1 model or the 2-to-1 model. I would say that you have a network of people who would then approach you and say, hey, we've got a difficult case, do you have the facilities to bring this on? And we have our network to be able to get housing fairly quickly and in certain locations that are going to be suitable for the individual. So, we tend to go down that process of tailoring it just to get that best outcomes. Obviously, that person that is 1-to-1, if we can get them settled, then they may then drop down to a shared living environment, which is the goal, right? That's part of, what we all do. We don't normally live in homes by ourselves alone. We're very community driven animals, mammals, and and I think that that's really important. So that's what we're trying to achieve with the people that we serve. So.
So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, for a brand new SIL provider, what were the questions that you had when you first started? So I know EQwell has a very unique backstory as far as how you became a SIL provider, but I have a lot of brand new SIL providers, people who are mostly core supports providers. They're then looking to move into SIL because they think that the money is bigger, there's bigger plans there, there's more consistency around being able to roster staff. These seem to be the reasons people want to go into SIL. From your perspective, is that true? Are the plans bigger? Are you making more money with SIL? Is there, or is there just, for more risk, there's more reward?
Both. So absolutely, it's a lot higher risk. When you first get into business, it's interesting. You have this idea of having responsibility of putting food on other people's table, your team members, your staff that you're responsible for leading, right? Getting into this was quite an unnerving situation, because coming to terms with the idea that not only do I have that, which is fine, made peace with that a long time ago, but you're running the lives of these people 24/7, and they typically don't have the capacity to make healthy decisions for themselves. So you're relying on a team of people that have the best interests of that individual at heart and always are maintaining that. So, yep, there is reliability of shifts. There's a lot more burnout, amongst staff, because they're not getting the results that they need or they're hoping for, or they're hitting brick walls. They're around these people constantly, and that can be challenging when they're trying to get, and we're not a parent. We don't fit that slot at all. We can't, it's not appropriate. So for us, we've got to fit into, our role very well, whilst also trying to deliver outcomes. And that way, it does tend to burden, some support workers more than others. But that then comes down to having the right mix and the right mix of people, and also the right scheduling as well. So you're not trying to burn them out, and also the right support for support workers too. So there's also, as you can imagine, when you've got 24/7 care, you're managing their entire life. If you're managing their entire life, you've got all sorts of things can go wrong. You know, you're there for all of the highs, but you're also there for all of the lows as well. Now, community access, which is another, another service type, it's brilliant. You know, it's a lot of fun. Usually, you know, it can be a lot of fun anyway. Some community access is more around, you know, going to the doctors, or, you know, going to other appointments or groceries or what have you. But a lot of it can be fun activities too. So they make a lot of wonderful memories. We don't fit that mold. We're more there to pick up the pieces when things go wrong, but we're also there to promote that sort of behavior too, and promote any learnings at home that we work with the allied health professionals and the specialists to be able to work through plans so that we can deliver and grow capacity. So, you know, with all of that, there's a lot more responsibility. There's a lot more risk of things that go wrong, when there's the downward trend and the bad things that happen. Yeah, you're looking at property damage, you're looking at physical abuse, potentially sexual abuse, potentially verbal abuse towards team members and staff. So a lot more higher risk of burnout, workers' comp claims, just bad things going wrong. And also just people, the individuals that you care for, getting into predicaments that put their health at risk as well. So, you know, I think the majority, well, maybe I'm biased as well. Maybe, you know, I just live in a bit of a tunnel, but I tend to hear more things going wrong in SIL environments than anything else. And of all of the service providers that are in the industry, I would say that we probably have the highest risk of backlash of things going wrong. There's bigger plans. Yep. And there's more reliability with the plans too. There's more consistency. Of course, when you're invoicing for support work hours, when you have that regular consistency, there's a lot more cushion there, because you've got more hours in the week that you're billing for. But also it's more regular as well, because you have to be there, whereas community access can be cancelled, although, you know, there are cancellation policies, of course. So, you know, that extra additional cushion, you know, you can do more with it, sure, but you've also got to factor in, and I think the way to make it successful is to reduce the risk as much as possible, whilst also ensuring that you have cushion there and you're constantly fixing a lot of the small issues before they become bigger issues. And what I mean by that, you know, property damage is fairly common. So you having a handyman on board and all of these things really does make it a lot easier. It's 24/7 care too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck sleeping in your first, little while. You've got that. You've got to have emergency contacts. You've got to have those systems in place. Any time of the day or night, you might be getting a phone call and you got to respond, you know.
So it sounds like there is a lot of risks. We've talked about risks of abuse. We've talked about risks to staff. We've talked about risks to participants. We've talked about damage to property. How do you go about managing those risks and minimizing those risks as a business owner?
Yeah, not sleeping. Well, you have really good contacts. It was a nice little lead up there, Tania. But yeah, you have really good contacts around compliance as well. We've got an incredible team of people around us, preferred partners, of which TGC is one of them. And compliance is a small part of that, of course. Not a small part; it's a major part, but it's one part of that. You've also got, you know, good HR policy. You've got good support policy as well, good support tools. So I think it's about preventative measures, but then also reactive measures as well. So having systems and tools and people in place that can help de-risk it by analysing and looking at your situation and offering guidance on how you can de-risk it, and then putting those plans in place, but then also having reactive situations, because at the end of the day, it's not a matter of if, it's kind of a matter of when.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have these other systems in place that are there to cater towards those emergency scenarios. What do you do in this scenario? What do you do in that scenario? So yeah, and I think honestly that is probably the thing that makes and very, very, very much breaks most SIL outfits, because what I hear in the industry constantly is that most SIL places just don't have those reactionary tools in place to support their team members or their staff manage those crises when they occur. And that's when there's jadedness and essentially the culture ends up turning south and bad, and that loyalty and disengagement, and that then results in potential burnout to the support workers, which then, and this is the worst part, it can result in carers burnout, which is where you feel a certain level potentially of resentment to the people that you're caring for. This is why we actually have carers respite as well for family members that are caring full time for somebody here in Australia. It's not so much a respite for the person being cared for, it's actually a respite for the carer themselves to reduce that burnout. So yeah, that can be that's something that's it's always top of mind, having those practices.
So we've talked about a lot of the risks and a lot of the challenges. Let's offset that a little bit by talking about why you do this. What are the positives about running SIL? Why do you do it? Why does it bring you joy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, as you well know, we got started through a pretty unique situation where it just so happened that we were the only option, and not necessarily a bad option, but because of the timeline, there was a certain case where someone may well have ended up in a lifetime of not an ideal situation, sort of someone who has slipped through the cracks, a previously very challenging person, of which our team was the only one that had managed to work through those challenging behaviours to get to the other side. So that process was really rewarding, and I think for me, on a personal level, I love to see people thrive, and I think that you can create happy memories in when you do community access. You can and there's a lot of incredible providers out there that do some amazing work, in making those dreams come true. But in order to get that, and in order to grow, you need to empower people to do that, right? And part of that is creating a safe home environment that feels comfortable and is tailored towards that person. Some people like houseplants, some people like pets, some people don't like either of those things. And, some people like music. And how do you tailor the environment to get the best chance of success? And as someone, on the neurodivergent sort of spectrum, my life has been about creating an environment for myself to optimize for the best chance of success. And I think we should all be doing that, really. But some people either don't have the capacity to think about that for themselves, or they, or they just don't think about that. That's just not a priority. And I think a personal passion of mine is about creating those environments for people, whether that be a workplace like EQwell, or some of the other workplaces I've had a hand in creating as well previously, or if it's a home environment for the people that we serve. So I think it's really about seeing that over time. So, this individual that I was talking about before, and how EQwell got started, there was a lot of instances of property damage, and, every other week there would be, a major incident with property damage and violent threats and somewhat attacks as well. I'm pleased to say that, now, years later, that rarely happens, touch wood, but it really rarely happens. And to see that progress, where he obviously feels safe enough in his environment that he doesn't need to become that person, where no other provider has been able to do that previously, it's an honor. If that's the only thing I achieved in life, that's awesome. That's I'm so stoked with that. I'm so proud and privileged that I was able to deliver on that for that person, and give that person a different life than where it was heading,
Something tells me there'll be many other great things that you'll be proud of in your life, Josh. I wanted to ask, we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about the benefits. you're a relatively new SIL provider. What would be your best piece of advice for someone either thinking about moving into SIL or someone who's recently moved into SIL?
Get clear on your why, I think. SIL is not something that you get into just because, or, it's a good business idea or for money. Although many people have, I don't think that those outfits will last very long. I don't think those businesses will last very long. Choice and control, will end up going with people that really genuinely care. And you can't make that up. It's a hard slog. It requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of patience and a great team of people that are all believing in the same cause. So, I don't think that getting into SIL should be a frivolous choice. I think looking at the reasons why, and if there's a need, and if there are an underserved group of people that you feel you can genuinely, even previously in business, I have always said this. My first company from years ago was a branding agency, and we used to only, we still do actually. We only work with people. Our rule is that we only work with people that are solving real problems for real people, right? And I think that a lot of that has come into EQwell as well, where we've got to see if we're actually the right fit. It's not about plans. It's not about because if it were, we would fail most of the people that were in our care now very quickly, like all of the previous providers that have failed. Those same people have, and I think about that a lot. So my advice is strap in, get ready for a turbulent ride, but also a very rewarding one, as long as you're clear on your why and you are genuinely showing up to solve real problems for those real people. You're going to do fine. You're going to do great. Also, actually, to add, partner with very, very good people. Be careful. A lot of people, early on said, you got to really choose the right participants. And I'm like, no. Even at the very beginning, I was like, no, it's not about the participants. You can do whatever you can make miracles happen if you've got the right people around you. But if you're one SIL provider with a team of, a support coordinator and an OT and, behavior support practitioner that are fairly disengaged, that are just expecting you to work miracles alone, you won't. It's impossible. And that will always reflect badly on you, not them. And so I'm very, very conscious of who I work with, not the participants. Like I said, it's always the team around them, because together collaboratively we can actually make miracles happen. It's hard, it's long. You might not always see progress, straight away, and it might not be as big progress as probably what you're used to, because it all happens in micro steps. But it is. If you can see it and celebrate those moments, it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. I have a follow-up question for you about participants and making sure you're the right fit for them. How exactly do you determine that? Because as a business owner, if I've rented a 4-bedroom house in any suburb and I've got an OOA and a support worker's room and I've got 3 bedrooms to fill, and my first participant has come because I was running community access and they needed support and I wanted to help them, and we had a great relationship, and I've moved them into one of those bedrooms and I have 2 other bedrooms to fill. Business would tell me that I need to fill those rooms. Otherwise, if they're on a 1-to-3 ratio, I'm not making money. I've got pressure coming down to fill that vacancy, to get bums on seats or bodies in beds in this case. How do you stay true to choosing the right participants? And, if there's that matching process, or whether it's matching between participants or matching between you and the participant or matching your staff to the participant, how do you make that the priority when you have the business pressures of actually making a profit or even covering costs?
And I think that's where I personally believe that SIL, it's a great question, and I think this is where SIL is almost broken up into 2 types. where there's the 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and possibly 1-to-2 ratios. And then there's everything in addition to that, where there's 3 or more people, and
so what you're talking about is a shared living environment versus a not shared living environment.
Exactly.
Someone who's sharing with a participant who's sharing with others, and a participant who is just supported by a care team.
Yeah, that's right. So look, when we're looking at 3 or more participants, individuals that are requiring support, typically they're lower needs, which is why that support worker is spread across 3 people. So because of that, the lower needs probably, look, when any individual has higher behaviours of concern, so concerning behaviours that might risk either their health or their outcomes or other people around them and their outcomes. So there's usually, that's usually reflected in that OT or behaviour support practitioner report that then derives that funding from the NDIS. So we look at that, and those situations are a little bit easier to manage because we can sort of tailor something a little bit better for those people. It's easier in some ways, and then it's more difficult in others because you have to be very, very, very careful about who you put with them. You can't just put any support worker. You can't create any team. You start really thinking about, what role models does this person need in their life? So I had a meeting yesterday with someone who's coming out of the justice system, who's 51, been in the justice system for 30 odd years, right? In and out for low level offences, right? So no physical attack or anything like that. But basically, this individual will really struggle to live with other people as well, but they also have their needs of, and these were the questions I was asking. I'm like, okay, so when you think about it, and this is where it becomes really important to have really good team members that are experienced in their niche, but I'm asking, okay, well, what, people are either motivated to go towards positivity in their life, or they're motivated to avoid negativity, right? And so I'm asking questions like, well, what threads can we kind of tug on as a support worker team to be able to promote more positive behaviours, so this person doesn't end up in the same predicament back in a reprimand facility or something like that. And this is the interesting thing that you kind of have to think about when it's a 1-to-1 or when there's significant behaviours of concern. And you're like, well, okay, what environments are going to work well to promote that positive behaviour? You're looking at anything, any tiny thing that might impact positively. If you can create the right serene environment for that person, and there's no point engaging if you're just like, yeah, whatever, we've got a bed. Because historically speaking, that person's going to end up exactly where they have been for the, on and off for 30 years, right? So when it comes to those bigger and larger shared environments, you can get away with things a little bit easier because those people usually don't have behaviours of concern. So they're potentially more sociable, they're more already integrated into society in that way. So then it becomes a matter of matching personality types. You can be a little bit more flexible with the support workers that you're putting with them and the team that you're building around them. But it's still, you don't just do nothing. Well, you shouldn't anyway. Some SIL providers just, it's like there's a support worker, we've checked a box, which I don't believe in personally, for the better outcomes, because everybody responds to things differently. Like if you had a participant who didn't have a very ideal male or female role model growing up, like a maternal or paternal role model, it might be quite good to fill that gap, not to become that person, but to have someone who embodies that paternal role or that maternal role to really support that person's growth in those areas and influence more positive behaviours. So look, matching people is probably the most challenging part of it. And that's why it has to be a very careful approach. You have to consider a lot of things. Will certain behaviours, even if they are minor, of one individual negatively impact another individual based on that person's trauma or experience, previous experience, or just their situation where they are particularly sensitive to certain things. Do they like each other? Is there a chance of liking each other and having that sociable environment too, and building a community within the home? So there's a lot of questions that kind of go into it. I think when you break it down into those shared environments and non-shared environments, the shared environments, typically it's more, hey, we've got availability, this is what the house is like. And it's sort of decided upon that, at the moment. I would love to see a world where people, and maybe this is a little bit further away, but I would love to see a world where people living with disabilities still, like, they can just live with disabilities with other people, and it doesn't have to be, there's a house for disabled people and they're all living in that house. It's, I think we all have a right, and we enjoy the right to choose who we live with and have housemates or don't have housemates or have families or what have you. And I think where there's capacity there, it would be lovely to give that opportunity to everybody, and if we're providing these homes, do we need to have just the same type of, the same disability, people living with the same disability all living together in the one house? Is that actually good for their capacity growth and their building as well?
So you talked a lot there about going above and beyond, in my opinion, of figuring out almost the psychology behind who's going to fit with who. Now, you didn't come from a disability background. You didn't work for years in SIL before this. Many SIL providers might not know this. How did you determine that the success of matching came down to really thinking through who this is going to suit? Where is that through experience of placing people with support workers and staff who didn't support their needs and reflecting on that? Is that something that you learned elsewhere? How did you come up with where did you get the information from that is how matching works best?
I would say probably from my own experience, right? So as someone late stage diagnosed with neurodivergence, both ASD and ADHD, it's I think the only reason why I've made success work for me is because I really looked at my environment and I crafted tools, or I implemented tools and strategies and processes that helped me overcome the challenges that I was facing. And I was talking about this last night as well at a different event, and we've created a workplace that is a one-size-fits-all approach, and we've all unanimously sort of just gone along with it. Weirdly enough, it doesn't work for me. I found it easier to build businesses and to work for myself than it was to work a 9 to 5. And I'm super impressed with anybody that can work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I'm not built like that. I can't do that. And so I think about that a lot. And I guess, having done half a psychology degree, thanks to ADHD, that was also just completely self-interest as well. So I didn't really see any utility to it. I think, people were like, oh yeah, you make a good psychologist. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a psychologist. Why am I doing this? But those learnings as well, and learning about motivation and what helps drive human behavior and that fascination with human behavior and why people choose to do the things that they do. I think there's this great analogy of the iceberg, and you sort of see, you see this thing on the top, and that is person's behavior. But underneath it, there's always more to it. If someone is reacting to something in a negative way and they're getting aggressive, or they're shouting, they're threatening, or these are all activities that are trying to control their environment in some way, right? Why? And so when we think about it with that lens, I think we can really start to see and give compassion to people for the decisions that they make, and why we make some of the bad decisions that we all make, and I extending upon that, you think about, well, how can I make better decisions? And so, you start changing your environment, and environment is everything. I think there's this great quote, which I absolutely cannot say, but basically it runs along the lines of, when a plant isn't growing, you don't shout at it and tell it to do better. You change the environment, you give it more sunlight, you change the soil, put more nutrients in the soil, you put more water into it, or you put less water into it. And we're no different. We're no different. We really are no different. I mean, it does take some self-agency as well, but people have different capacities of that too, right? So where did I learn it? It wasn't on the job. It was something that I saw wasn't happening in SIL when I first got into the industry, and to my surprise. And I thought, oh, well, this seems so obvious. What? I've been doing this for myself for so long. Why? And of course, at that time, I didn't have a diagnosis, so I was just really confused. Well, why don't we do this? It seems so obvious, but yeah, I think we're getting there. NDIS is fairly new, and we're getting out of this, putting everybody in a corner and saying, "Cool, job done." We're really trying hard to integrate into the community, and there's a lot of passion out there, and certainly I have a lot of passion for trying to bring disability at the forefront of everybody's not the forefront of everybody's mind, but so that they're conscious enough to be able to ask, say, yeah, I've thought about what it might be like to navigate the world with blindness, or navigate the world with being a deaf person. How do I go shopping as a deaf person, and what do I do? And I think if we can do that, then we can all have this shared camaraderie of lifting each other up. But unless we're thinking about other people's experience and what is going to work for them that's different to you, I don't think we'll ever get there.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a very good point. I really enjoyed it chatting with you today, as always.
Thank you, Tania.
If there are people out there who want to reach out to you and learn more about EQwell and what you do, and potentially collaborate with you, or to pick your brain more about the amazing model that you have at EQwell, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Sure. So my email's Josh at EQwell, EQwell, so that's eqwell.au. And also you can jump on our website, www.eqwell.au. Give me a call if you like. There's a 1300 number and 387355, I think. Don't quote me on that one. But yeah, very welcome to get in touch. LinkedIn as well. Josh Grapes on LinkedIn, on every social. So feel free to get in touch.
Thanks so much. And thanks for joining us on our very first episode of SILosophy. You were the perfect first guest.
Thank you for having me. It's always an honor, Tania. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of SILosophy. If this resonated with you, take a second to subscribe and share it with someone in the SIL space who really needs to hear this. Don't forget to connect with Tania Gomez Consulting on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook for more resources, conversations, and support to help you grow your impact. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep making a difference.